Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be it's definitely going to be unique. There's no question about that, Richard. And I'm looking forward to it. The news came out I think about a week ago or so. They're not going to have sideline reporters down on the field. And for about 2 minutes, I just went through this. I went through an anger session. I was like, I was really upset. And then my boss called me and said, no. You're still going to be there, but you're just going to be like the first row of the stands. I was like, that's it? Oh, man, I love that. That'll be fine. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Arrowhead. Things have changed dramatically in our radio world and broadcasting the games. I don't think that our play-by-play and game analysts, Mark Vandermeer and Andre Ware, are going to travel to the game. It's just going to be me, so I'll be on a wireless with them as they're on a studio back here in Houston. So things are definitely going to be different this year, but just the fact that we're seeing football and, had an opportunity in training camp to see all the practices, and we had a scrimmage last night at NRG Stadium, and the guys put on their jerseys, and they kind of went through a pseudo game, went in for halftime, did all that kind of stuff, and it just was like, this is kind of it's normal. It's normal. Now, when there are no fans in there when the game starts, that'll be a little different. But it was just great to see. I was happy to see my guys playing football again. It was really neat. And hopefully throughout our world, we'll be able to have that happen here sometime soon.
Yeah, and John, it's interesting because different leagues are taking different approaches to the whole sideline thing. I got a text message from a guy that I know that is a sideline reporter in the ACC, and he's like, hey, I've been told that I'm out. Are you going to work this year? I was like, yeah, I've been told that sideline reporters for both radio and television have been considered part of that essential group that will actually be on the field when it comes to the SEC. And we had already kind of played around with some different ideas of if they didn't allow that, was I going to be in the booth or was I going to be roaming around in the stands? And I guess we would have figured it out, but at least for now, it looks like that's not going to be an issue. And I feel pretty fortunate that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to pull up a seat next to, Lisa Salters and Michelle Tafoya and, these sideline reporters who actually over the years I've gotten to know a little bit. Lisa Salters and I had a long discussion at halftime of the playoff game against the Bills. So, I've gotten to know them, so I'm sure that we'll be sitting next to each other in the stands. But, as far as us, they're just not allowing, people, additional people to be down on the sideline, and hopefully it'll go back to normal in 2021. But, yeah, it's just interesting how the different conferences, especially in college football, have looked at everything. Obviously you got two conferences, the Power Five, that said we're not playing football. Now you got one saying, well, we might be back by Thanksgiving. Then it's like, well, maybe the end of October. Who knows? But the SEC and the ACC and Big 12 stayed the course. I'm really intrigued about this conference schedule. But as far as we go, it's the league has really stood firm on how they were going to do things. They sent everybody home in March. Everybody, no matter whether it was a shelter in place locally for teams or not. Everybody's going home. Everybody's doing a draft from home. Everybody's doing free agency from home. We're going to have a virtual offseason, so everybody's staying home. They set out the protocols for testing and practice and everything in training camp, and that seemingly has gone very, very well. Now they've got to encounter the last hurdle, which is the travel part of things. But the NFL seemingly each and every step, although we get antsy, and I'm sure like you, Richard, you wanted to know, I wanted to know. And so the NFL kind of waits a little bit longer just to make sure they have it. But when they have something down cold, they send it out to the teams and said, "That's what we're going with. Deal with it." And I think the teams have, and I think the teams are making the most of it. I think the teams have all found ways this year that maybe can make the process of building a team, building an organization, building a championship team. They've found some efficiencies, been forced into it the last couple of months, and maybe we'll see how that goes going forward. But I give credit to Roger Goodell in the league, which a lot of people probably won't do because they don't care for Roger Goodell. The league's done a hell of a job making sure that the teams follow the protocols, and then the players and coaches and staffs and organizations themselves have done the same thing. I basically go to Kroger or H-E-B and come home, and then the stadium. That's it. So, I think the players are the same way. They've gone practice, home. And I think that's why we've seen such low numbers. And then if somebody is starting to act the fool, like that Seattle Seahawks defensive back who's trying to sneak a woman into his room, they've gotten rid of those players. They don't play around. So I think it's gone pretty well, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
Was there a point, John, once practice began, training camp, whatever it is that we're calling this time leading up to the season, where it felt like a switch flipped? And we know that this year's unique, and we know that it's different, but was there a point where it became, okay, it's still football, and we've got a game coming up in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, now 13 days?
Yeah, I think, the first day of training camp for us was not the first day of training camp for the guys. They got in, I think, like July 25th. That's when they started doing all the testing. And they had been in for a while. So the first time that we saw them was the first day in pads. And we saw them in the bubble. Now, typically, every year that I can remember, the very first practice is always outside. And it's in front of a bunch of fans. But that first day, that felt a little like, okay, I'm not quite in it yet. But the next day, they went outside. And for some reason, when they went outside, that's when it kind of clicked like, all right, it's football. We're doing all right. The tests are all coming back negative. We're doing okay. It's football. It's okay to be happy about football coming back. And that's when it started to kind of feel normal. It was the second day of like, all right, now we're in it. Now, I'll be honest with you, because I'm testing every single day and going up to the stadium, sometimes working from home, sometimes I'm at the stadium. I can't tell you what day it is. I spent yesterday thinking it was Friday all day long. Completely all day long. So the days kind of run together, but that's training camp, I think. And so I guess maybe that's as normal as anything. But it really wasn't until the second day where I felt like, okay, it's cool. It's okay to feel happy about football being back. And that's all right. And so I really started kind of getting a little bit in the groove that second day, and then have been so ever since.
All right, I want to test you right now. And we'll talk more specifically about the Texans in a second. We know, John, you and I have been together. We know that both of us are talkers, and sometimes time is not our friend. So I want to see if you can do this in 10 to 15 seconds for each division in the NFL. Tell me who the favorite is to win the division, and give me a 10 to 15 second answer as to why. Let's start in the AFC East.
It's the Buffalo Bills, because the Buffalo Bills are the most talented and deep team potentially in the AFC.
Ooh.
Yeah.
See, now you got me wanting more, but you nailed it, but now I want more. So we'll go through all of them. AFC North, any question that it's the Baltimore Ravens?
Potentially, because I think the Steelers are going to be so good defensively. I think the Ravens, this whole Earl Thomas thing could rear its ugly head, but I think the Ravens have the most overall talent. The Steelers have the best defense, so I'll give the Steelers a chance, but it's going to be Baltimore.
AFC South, is it your Houston Texans, or is it one of the other teams? Is it the Titans, maybe?
If it's us, if it's not us, it's the Colts.
Okay. Why?
Because I think the Colts are as talented as any team we're going to face. I mean, Chris Ballard, GM there, has been building and stacking talent on top of talent on top of talent. And guess where he puts it? Offensive line, defensive line. Well, guess where you're going to win this league? If you got a quarterback that can just keep it together enough, and Phillip Rivers, they're going to be a really tough out. I mean, with those two running backs, Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor, whew, and they're stout on both lines, they're going to be really tough to beat. But we have Deshaun Watson, and we are fast. I don't know if they can match up with that, and that's going to be their problem against us.
All right, we'll do the NFC after we come back from the break. We've got about a minute left to the break. AFC West, is it Kansas City and everybody else, or is there somebody else that you're really looking at?
I think this division could be as competitive as any division in the league. I think the three teams behind Kansas City all improved mightily this offseason, all of them. I think the Chargers' defense is scary. The Raiders got faster offensively, and I think the Broncos added a number of key pieces. But the Chiefs, to be honest, I mean, the Chiefs got better and better every week last year, and they're going to be as good. But they've had a couple of opt-outs and 2 suspensions that really could hurt their depth. So I'm not putting anybody else above Kansas City, but I think Kansas City will come back a little bit to the pack in the AFC West. But I think the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos are as good as 2, 3, and 4 you're going to find in any league, any conference, or any division in the NFL.
All right, we'll do the exact same thing with the NFC when we come back. We're going to continue with John Harris from the Houston Texans, sideline reporter on the Houston Texans radio network. Quick timeout. Talk Mississippi with you on this Friday afternoon, almost halfway through the show. John Harris on for another segment, kind enough to spend some time with us on the Farm Bureau phone line. Again, favorites.com. There you can go with the home team. John is the sideline reporter for the Houston Texans. He's got a really cool website called footballtakeover.com. You can go there and check out all kinds of neat stuff. And it's updated fairly regularly, maybe a little less as things get busier once football really gets rolling. John, we were walking through the AFC. You gave me the Buffalo Bills in the East, and you said maybe the most talented team in the AFC. A nod to Baltimore, but look out big time for Pittsburgh in the AFC North. I think a nod to your hometown Houston Texans, but look out for the Colts, who are incredibly talented, and the Chiefs, but a wildly competitive AFC West. Is that a fair summary?
That is a fair summary. I think the one thing I would add for Buffalo is the depth that they have throughout their team. I mean, I saw in that playoff game, I'm like, man, if Josh Allen doesn't turn into, as one of the athletic writers from Buffalo called him, Wyoming Josh, they beat us by 3 touchdowns, which is probably true. But as long as he doesn't turn into Wyoming Josh, that team's as good as anyone. They were scary athletic. I mean, Tre'Davious White, Tremaine Edmonds on defense, up front at Oliver. I mean, they're just stacked. And then they added Stephon Diggs, the receiver. So, man, if we get in the playoffs this year, we may be going to Buffalo to take on that team. I know everybody wants to talk about New England. Oh, Cam Newton's there. Look, the personnel losses on defense, they lost over half that defense through either COVID opt-outs or free agency. That defense is not going to be like what it was. Now, it won't be horrid, but it's just not going to be like it was, and they can't fall back on Tom Brady and Wes Welker and Randy Moss to go get 35 a game like they could way back in 2007 through 2009. That ain't going to happen. So from that perspective, the Patriots, I think, will still be 7-9, 8-8, somewhere in that range. They may even be 9-7, get a wild card, but the Bills are just too talented and too deep. They're deep at nearly every spot, and it just all comes back to Josh Allen. If he that's the right way of saying this. If he doesn't play well, that's the nice way of saying it, then they won't win the division, or they'll just be another wild card again, have to go on the road in the first round. But if he just plays a solid, non-turnover-like game and he shows some progress, the Bills are going to be a tough out for anybody in the playoffs.
NFC East, Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, the Washington football team. Who do you like?
You like how I did that? Who am I going to pick? Who do I like? Because I don't like any of them, but especially the one I'm about to say. But Dallas, Dallas. I look up at Dallas with Mike McCarthy, and I think, oh, boy, Mike McCarthy bringing his coaching acumen, giving them a different look at things. Now, they'll be running the same offense, but I just think Mike McCarthy will force them to look at it through some different eyes, and I think that will help for Dak Prescott. They had CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver. Come on now. Mm-hmm. That group's going to be just stupid good. And then defensively, Aldon Smith came back, and all indications are Aldon Smith just went from being a complete malcontent, absolute issue off the field to 4 or 5 years later getting his act together and all of a sudden looking like he did back in 2012. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I think the Cowboys they're way more athletic, I think, than anybody in that division. And we saw those teams a couple of years ago. The Eagles have had some injuries on the offensive line. I think the Cowboys are 1. The Eagles are 2. I think Washington will be better. I think the Giants, we'll see. Joe Judge will be kind of interesting to watch, that's for sure.
NFC North, is that an interesting division?
Heck yeah, it is. We play them this year. So we go to Chicago and to Detroit, and then Green Bay and Minnesota come here. So it couldn't have worked out better for us that we get the 2 best teams to come to us, and then we go to Detroit, Chicago. I think Chicago will be improved, but it depends on whether Nick Foles is the guy that the Philadelphia Eagles fans fell in love with, or whether he's the one that played on Jacksonville last year. If it's Mitch Trubisky, I don't think anybody has any faith in him. But when you face Chicago, it's just going to be a no-holds sparred, brawl with that defense. And I think that's the issue is they've got that defense. If their offense can do anything, I'd be apt to put Chicago back up there. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the best team in that division that's going to win it is Minnesota. And I don't think Minnesota's as good as it even was last year, but I think Green Bay takes a step and a half back. Everything had to fall right for Green Bay last year to get to 13-3. I think they fall back a little bit. I think Green Bay's a 9-7 team. I think Minnesota's 10-6, and I think Minnesota wins that division.
NFC South is interesting to me because you've got Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. You've got probably the last year for Drew Brees. Obviously, Matt Rule is new in Carolina. I don't think they're going to be there yet. And I don't think the Falcons can continue to be as bad as they have been given the personnel they've got. Who is it that comes out on top in the NFC South?
It's going to sound strange, but it really won't surprise me. Even Carolina, I know that sounds weird, but Carolina is wildly talented offensively. And now Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is the right guy to put in that offense.
Okay.
I mean, if you're not going to put a just flat-out gunslinger that's just going to throw it deep all the time, then Teddy might be the right guy. He's going to check it down to McCaffrey. He's going to take what defenses give to him for Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore. And Joe Brady's running that offense. They got some ability in that offense, man. I'll tell you that. Defensively, they put a lot of stock in the draft. So Derek Brown is there. You're going to see probably 2-3 young guys. The defense won't quite be there. I think the best team still is going to be the Saints. I know everybody's like, wait, the Buccaneers. I'm not ready to jump on that train yet. I remember when the Eagles thought they were the dream team back in 2011. They finished 6-10. So I'm going to hold up on the hype train just a bit on Tampa Bay. But I do think Tampa Bay gets in the playoffs, so I think it's still going to be the Saints. The Saints are going to be salty. And they added Emmanuel Sanders to go along with Drew Brees and everything else. Alvin Kamara, Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook. My goodness. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot the best receiver in the league, Michael Thomas. So I still think it's the Saints at 11-5 or 12-4. And I think the Bucs will be 10-6. So I think the Bucs will be a step behind them.
NFC West. Let's do the quick summary here, the 15-second summary. Who do you like in the NFC West? Pregnant pause.
This one's hard. I'm going to roll with Russell Wilson. I think the Niners have had some injuries that will impact them. I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I don't love the Seahawks. This division is going to be rough. This one's kind of to me all over the place. But I'm going to end up going, when in doubt, go with the best quarterback in the division, Russell Wilson. Let's do it.
He's got a weapon in DK Metcalf that a lot of people around here are keeping their eye on as well. A couple of minutes left, John, and this is far less fun than going division by division and picking winners. But I feel like I've got to ask you, because you and I talked about this a while back, and the fans and the sponsors of the Houston Texans I know are going to be watching. A lot of eyes on Dallas with Jerry Jones. What is this thing going to look like when we kick it off in terms of player protests, statements, social justice initiatives, kneeling, all of the above? How concerned are you, and what do you think it's going to look like?
Well, I can say this because I haven't seen the deck that's come from the league apparently, but my boss Mark Vandermeer has, and he hasn't shown it to me because we haven't seen each other. We haven't seen each other for months. But things will look different. Things will on a number of different levels, whether it's decals on helmets, whether it's different names in the back of jerseys, whatever. He hasn't told me exactly what it's going to be, and he doesn't have the full and utmost deck, but he's seen most of it. There's going to be a big step by the league to step forth in these social justice matters. The league has been listening to its players. The organizations have been listening to their players, and the league is in a much different place now than it was 4 years ago for, when Colin Kaepernick first knelt during the national anthem. First he sat and then he knelt. But I don't know exactly what that's going to be, Richard. I just have heard little things here or there. After our scrimmage last night, the guys stayed down on the bowl on the field. They sit crisscross applesauce and started discussing different things that they were concerned about, led by Kenny Stills, who has been forefront in the social justice initiatives. Michael Thomas, the safety from here in Houston, went to Stanford. He stood up and spoke. And they just had a conversation, the players and those leaders. So I'm curious myself to see what initiatives, are put out there, especially Thursday night, because it'll be the first game. But I do know, just based on what the league has sent and what Mark has said to me, that it will definitely look different. And so it's going to be the NFL, but, there's going to be messaging. And I think it's going to be, to an extent, a lot like the NBA has. And we'll see what that all looks like exactly. But I do know that something and those sort of initiatives have been received by the NFL, and they want to make sure that these players' voices are heard on social justice. There's no question. So, yeah, you'll definitely see a change in that regard on Thursday night for sure.
It's going to be interesting to see what it looks like. John, always appreciate your time. Great information today. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, Richard. Great talking to you, brother.